We're still working on it. It's a work in progress. Separate but equal. It was too close. They must never touch. Yo, what up? had a chance to see it, no. Is it worth watching? All right, guys, we're gonna talk about Ethan Klein. Just kidding.
The Enlightened Network is proud to present Word War Debate, the premier debate league. I'm Ben Swan, and I'm here to introduce the new gold standard of debates. Every statement, every argument, every counterpoint is tested
Thanks for the membership.
under the lights in real time. Let's send it over now to Andrew Wilson and Sam Tripoli inside the ACX1 studios in Atlantic City. Guys?
What we decided to do was get a great team of people together.
I love these
get
guys.
One hell of a venue and put together some of the funnest and most riveting debates that you've ever seen. And I'm going to moderate these debates. And this is going to be fantastic.
And if you're lucky, maybe at the end, Andrew might debate. We don't know. Why would we have Michael Jordan sitting aside coaching? Why not throw him in the game?
We're going to have the best on, and we're going to put it in the best venue.
There's
gonna
debates
be
all over the place, but there's no brand of excellence where you go, this is where the best go to bang.
And to that effect, that's exactly what we're putting together.
And to that effect, that's what we're putting together. Yo, guys, what's up? Hope you guys doing well. Happy Monday. Just kidding. MJ on the bench. He wants to meet a representative of his worldview. True. You look sniz. Nerd shit. How's everybody doing? Did you have a wonderful night? Did you really, really do good at work today? It's only halfway through the day. You know, you could do a little more at work. Never killed you. You could send that one extra email. Let's everyone take a minute to send that extra little email. That extra little alert. You know, that annoying little thing. I'm gonna help you out here. I'm gonna do my annoying little message. Yo. I'll just grab a train. Don't worry about it. Done. Pretty cool, huh? Tell us why SCOTUS bad. I didn't say SCOTUS bad. It's SCOTUS lame. I guess I might as well. Oh my god. Train to where? Yeah, I'll handle it. Okay, I'll keep you posted. So high maintenance. Might as well show you just a little bit of this Twitter thread while we wait for Conor. We're going to talk to Conor in a second. Hopefully he's gotten LACTOID on board. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, Clarice. What do I do here? I do this. Then I do this. Then I do this. Please stop messaging me. Okay. If so, I'll Uber. Sorry, guys. This is very unprofessional of me. We're going to get into it in a second. Okay. So the first thing to know about SCOTUS is... God damn. Okay. Thank you. I got the message. It is received. I'll let you know when I can. Can't respond anymore. Thank you. Smiley. Okay, we're going to talk to Conor in a second, but I do want to first off talk a little bit about SCOTUS and a little bit about oh wow, thank you so much for the super chat. Caramel Cold Brew with the $5 super chat says, "It's all good, man." All right, I hope you guys all sent your annoying little message. Your annoying little message that you had to send. We both did that. Ryan had like a very like what are the odds here? Tariff case, birthright citizenship, the Humphreys executor case, which is up for well, they just did oral arguments, right? Wasn't this like recently? It might have been yesterday. The first thing to note is you should always just, when it's an obvious thing for SCOTUS to get correct, you should, if it favors Trump for them to get it incorrect, you should give it like a 30 to 31% chance minimum for them to find some bullshit to help Trump out. There's just no reason for our court's precedent to be as messy, incomprehensible, and unjustifiable as it is. We just have non-stop shadow docket shit that like lower courts can't handle. Nothing makes any sense. Including, by the way, what is about to be an overturning of Humphrey's executor. Humphrey's executor is just another in the long list of, you know that meme of the Napolitano. Oh, I'll message you on Discord. Thank you. Sorry. I have so many fucking messages all the time. I get overwhelmed, as you guys can very much see. I very much want to know what Napolitano thinks about throwing Hegseth in prison for murder. That's something I do want to explore a little bit. You know that meme with the Reaper going to every door? It seems like every precedent of wow, thank you so much for the sub on Twitch. Appreciate you. And it just doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any fucking sense. So let me give you an example here. So we already knew which way the Humphreys executor case was gonna suss out, which way it was gonna go. I have to find it actually here. In a previous case, it didn't have to do with the FTC at that point in time, Federal Trade Commission. It had to do with the NLRB and the Merit Systems Protection Board. It's a case called Trump v. Wilcox, one of the earlier cases from May. Hang on, let me show it to you real quick. So this is an example of SCOTUS trying to get to a result, not really caring about the precedent, right? And here we have, again, a firing that Trump undertook in like earlier spring or whatever, and they granted the stay for the lower courts who were upholding the precedent of the court that basically these roles from the National Labor Relations Board, MSPB, they were insulated from firing except for cause. This is all about the president's removal authority. And you'll note that they're talking about how the members of this commission wield a great deal of federal authority, significant authority, and so they're and that they don't fall into the exceptions for cause removal protections found in Humphreys. And now look at what they say, though, about the Federal Reserve. Respondents Gwen Wilcox and Kathy Harris contend that the arguments in this case necessarily implicate the constitutionality of for-cause removal protections for members of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors or other members of the Federal Open Market Committee. We disagree. The Federal Reserve is a uniquely structured, quasi-private entity that follows in the distinct historical tradition of the first and second banks of the United States. This is the most bullshit fucking framing I have ever seen from the court. And we had to sit around and pretend that this made any sense. A, for them to dispositively rule on. So this is them and Wilcox ruling, even though it's not before them, that the Federal Reserve system, that this system gets to stay, right? We get to have protections for Powell and for the Federal Reserve. That's okay. So you need to find a way to put the Federal Reserve in a box and exclude everything else. Exclude the FTC, which was at issue in Humphrey's executor in the first place. Exclude the NLRB. Exclude, I'm guessing, in Morrison v. Olson, right? We don't have this anymore, but the independent prosecutor statute. So any kind of, forget about it, any kind of like DOJ official, and just keep the Federal Reserve, which is what they want. And what did we have here, right? Does this look like a rule based on some principle of law? No, it doesn't look like a rule at all. It doesn't really seem to be grounding down to any like principle of constitutional import. Jump in my chat whenever you're ready. I think, okay, cool. I'll jump in chat in like 5, just finishing something. We got Conor. Like, what is the court's view here of the Federal Reserve? That the Federal Reserve, there's a constitutional exception for the removal authority for the Federal Reserve. Remember, this is all supposed to be grounded in Article 2 of the Constitution. And we're supposed to believe that this originalist court, they're reading in to Article 2, where Madison and Jefferson, at least as between Madison, Jefferson, and Hamilton, they all seem to think that the Federal Reserve the first national bank, right? The first bank of the United States was unconstitutional. But we're supposed to read in here, Federal Reserve exception. And I'll remind you guys, the removal authority isn't even in any text. There is no text for the removal authority. There's text for the appointment authority, but there's no text for the removal authority. And so what does the Supreme Court tell us? And they're signaling the end of FTC and Humphrey's executor broadly. All right, so our rule going forward is, well, the Federal Reserve is a uniquely structured, quasi-private entity that follows in distinct historical tradition of the first and second banks of the United States. This is absurd. The first is the notion of unique structuring. All right, so it's a unique structure in that what? I mean, these all seem to be double counting the same thing. Is that there's like a quasi-private element to some of the people who make up the Federal Reserve. But that, again, it's just like saying the same thing. It's like, okay, is this all it takes for you to be considered part of this historical tradition? The first bank of the United States is completely different than the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve is a monetary authority. That wasn't what the first and second banks of the United States were. They were not those things. Federal Reserve is, again, like very differently structured than these two entities. And so it's just like, well, it looks like the first and second banks of the United States. But of course, the first and second banks of the United States postdate the creation of the Article 2 in the first place. So the question is, why? Why is this the rule? Why is it the case that when there's a private, quasi-private entity, that's okay? Can we do that with all of our other agencies? We can just make all of our federal agencies quasi-private entities, and all of a sudden we've fulfilled the test? Like, what is this test? Try to think about it. What is the test here? The test is, as far as I can understand it, uniquely structured plus quasi-private plus seems like, but isn't really like the first and second national banks. Try to derive a test and then try to see if it applies to the Article 2 as you can understand it. It's just gobbledygook. It's make-believe. All of this is a game. Like, who buys this shit? So now we're waiting for a ruling that we already know the result of, because what they care about is the results. They don't want Trump fucking with the Federal Reserve, but they don't care, they don't care as much about labor. They don't care as much about independent Department of Justice. They don't care as much about, monopolies, the FTC and shit like that. So, actually, no, I don't know if it's not FTC, right? Hang on, fuck. I'm double. It is FTC, Federal Trade Commission. Wait. Holy shit. All right, I was right. Okay, cool. And they just want the Federal Reserve in there because they think it might be too bad to like let Trump take control of monetary policy. So this is the results-oriented approach of the Supreme Court. And there is no reason for them to reach this. Okay, there is zero reason for them to conclude as a matter of law that this is the case. And Kagan calls them out for this shit. Where do they do it? Except apparently for the Federal Reserve. The majority closes today's order by stating out of the blue that it has no bearing on the constitutionality of for-cause removal for Federal Reserve. I'm glad to hear it and do not doubt the majority's intention to avoid imperiling the Fed. But then today's order poses a puzzle. For the Federal Reserve's independence rests on the same constitutional and analytic foundations as that of the NLRB, MSPB, FTC, FCC, and so on, which is to say it rests largely on Humphreys. So the majority has to offer a different story. The Federal Reserve, it submits, is a uniquely structured entity with a distinct historical tradition. But that's not anything, right? Like, this is not anything. This is not why, right? It's like when you talk to some people about, I can't bring up another example other than the Ethan Klein stuff, where they'll bring up a bunch of distinctions between this and other cases and like this, and they give a bunch of differences and distinctions, but they don't explain why those distinctions matter. Where does this test come from? It's all make-believe. They've abandoned a test that made sense, that had some foundation in at least something approaching a good faith attempt to wrestle with independent agencies, and have just made it, okay, whatever we want, totally valueless bullshit. And more of that potentially on other issues too. I'm going to go talk to Conor though first, and we'll get more into the law stuff in a bit. Let me just go talk to Counterpoints. I told them we'd be having a chat.
In power, you understand that? Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm getting less frustrated and less angry now with the Sitchin, Adam, contrarian, right-wing people, but I'm still pretty pissed. I forget what the fuck I was talking about. Pisco's ready though. So we'll summarize it. I love this content. I thought it was excellent content. I thought that Nick Fuentes is going to have a cultural, as long as he doesn't get murdered, he's going to have a cultural impact for decades to come. I think that in the first 30% of the conversation, Piers Morgan did an excellent job of pressing Nick Fuentes with his own clips. I think, however, in the second half, 2/3 of the conversation, Nick found his rhythm, seized conversational momentum, and was able to turn his clips either into jokes or real conversations about his platform that he was then able to engage in with some degree sympathetically with Piers Morgan. And Piers Morgan trying to dunk on him and be like, you're a virgin, you're a loser, you're a virgin, you're a loser, you're a virgin.
Why is he fucking recapitulating his whole
stream? That's going to play maybe to vindictive normies. It's not going to play with sympathetic normies. It's not going to play with groypers. It's not going to play with young men who feel disenfranchised by society. and those are the people that we need to target most. So, anyways, like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. I'm going to get Mr. Pisco in here. Thank you to the 14 people who have donated so far today. Thank you, Doobie, Lobo Solo, the solo wolf, the lone wolf. Thank you to Big Hoff 98. Thank you to Grassroots. Thank you to Justin.
He's thanking
Sergeant
all
Flex,
his viewers.
Baston, Dungus McBungus, Politics JK, Vazaraka, Anonymous Chatter, aka Games Are for Kids 91, Deus Halcyon, and Fellrunner. Thank you for either gifting memberships and or super chatting. I know Christmas is very expensive. I appreciate you guys putting a little bit of your money towards the content. I really do. Let me call Pisco and let's do another episode of the
turn on camera, pop out.
Yo.
Hey, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing well, bro. Just give me a second to get shit working real
Same.
quick.
I'm trying to move you, but for some reason,
Don't you move me.
I'm trying to move you onto my screen, but for some reason you're like minimized. I don't know what to do about it.
What's your problem?
What do I do with this?
I don't know, man.
Can I call you back real quick because my stuff is actually like messed up where I can't control it.
Yeah. Call me back.
Oh,
bro.
hold on. I see it. Let me.
Hold
grab-
on.
Why won't you let me grab you in the butt?
Oh God.
Okay, it's not letting me move you. So let me end the call and move the Discord and then call you right back.
All right. This motherfucker right here.
Let's see if the pop out will let me do that. And then the pop out is back in the terrible position again. Okay.
You can do like Windows left, right if you want to adjust.
Give me 5 seconds. I'll just call you, and if I accidentally dox Send Patriarch, then that's Send Patriarch's problem.
Okay.
So
what? I don't even know what he said. Send.
all right. What's up, man? How are you? How are you?
Good. Are you good? You're good?
Yeah, I'm good. I don't know what you wanted to talk about today, but let me just make
shit.
sure that everything's on screen. Yeah, everything's on screen.
Okay. Cool.
So I just got done reviewing the Nick Fuentes content, which I found fascinating. So
huh?
I would be happy to talk about that, but I'll be happy to talk about whatever you want to talk about. So what's up with you? What do you want to talk about?
First of all, I wanted to let you know that that Hutch he's gonna buy a gun, and so he's gonna understand power. So I just want to let you know that.
Yes, nice. He should DM me.
power.
That way I could give him some advice on power first.
Yeah.
Also, I did want to share too. I don't know if your chat's aware. iCal Rich passed. So iCal Rich was a guy who was a debate bro. Not a debate bro. He was a debate teacher. He's probably in his 50s. Unfortunately, he suffered a cardiovascular incident. He passed. And so this was just within the past couple of weeks. So I don't really have a lot of like huge memories with iCal, partially because he was polite during debates. iCal Rich, ICOWRICH. He was in the panel scene on Prime, and I think he might have even been on Tiberius's, and also he was on Tiberius, he was on Prime, and I think he might have been on the Hippy Dippy a couple of times. But he was a veteran of the debate scene for a while.
Oh shit! Do I remember this guy? One sec.
Maybe not. But anyways, I was just thinking, like, we're all going to get older. Some of us are going to die, and we're going to die as a part of this digital community. So I almost feel like we should honor our fallen soldiers at some point. So I was just going to say, maybe some weekend in the next month or something, we should just get together and just play, even if nobody has really that much to say about it. We could just say, hey, he was one of us.
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm pretty sure. Was this guy the judge of like the? No way. He's got a big beard.
Yeah,
Damn.
Huge white beard.
Hang on. I might remember this guy. Maybe it's possible that he moderated the debate I did with Ryan. Maybe not though. Wait, was that him, guys? He was one of the debates. That was the guy. He was the guy who voted for me. Oh, rest in peace. Rest in peace. That sucked.
Yeah, and once again, like, so if Lauren Southern died, knock on wood, if Destiny died, if Vosh died or whatever, I would have like a series of eulogistic phrases that I could say where I could be like, oh, this is what I think about them, this is what I feel about them. I just think iCal Rich was a nice guy, and he didn't really throw particularly sharp elbows, so I don't have like a whole speech for I Cow Rich. I just think he was one of us.
Oh fuck! Wait, hang on. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope. Damn, that's fuck. It's weird, right? Because this isn't the first time. There was another person from the Twitch panel. I keep wanting to say panelverse, but the panelverse of Twitch debates where I forget their name, but it sort of hit me weird. But no, it's kind of odd because you do spend hours and hours with these people and in these conversations, and you start to form and grow relationships with them. So that's really sad to hear.
Yeah. And I think the only reason why it was fresh in my head was I was just watching Nick Fuentes talk about Charlie Kirk and how surreal it was that even though they were like political, Coach Red Pill, aka Batu Sai brought that up. Coach Red Pill.
Oh, that's one. Yeah.
He was a guy who got killed in the Ukrainian conflict. But anyways, he was bringing up how surreal it was that even though they were political rivals, even though they disliked each other, even though they had contrary political projects, there was a part of them that was like psychologically fucked up because he watched one of his peers in the online alternative media political space get murdered.
Yeah.
And that kind of shocked him. And, I don't know about you, but my plan is hopefully to be here for decades. So, people might be listening to me talk about in the beginning, 50 years from now, with Alzheimer's, and then they're going to watch me die. So, just get ready for that.
I'll remember you, Connor. I'll remember everything you said for. What that is exactly will be a matter of historical debate, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But okay. So a couple things that I wanted to address with you. First, it sounds like you listened to the Fuentes. I haven't seen it yet with Piers Morgan.
It's good. It's good content.
Is that something approaching him like berating Fuentes for shit he said? Is that more or less what happened?
It is, but it starts out really good. So what happens at first is Fuentes is expecting probably a softball interview because let's be real, Crowder pressed him a little bit. Carlson didn't press him at all. Candace Owens pressed him about personal shit, but not really his politics. And so I think he's gotten into a flow where he thought that he wasn't going to get like hammed up on his personal views super hard. I know he knew that it was going to be adversarial, but he genuinely seemed to get caught flat-footed in the first like 30% of the debate. And I was like, damn, like Piers Morgan's doing good. But then Piers Morgan loses some argumentative momentum, in my opinion, around per capita crime rates and serial killing and mass shooting. And then after that, it seems like because Nick had confidence once he won that mini interaction, he started hitting his flow. And then once he started hitting his flow, he kind of deflected the insults or the clips, and then he used it as a platform through which to throw out his own platform. And so ultimately, I think that most people, if they were being honest, they would view it as like Nick succeeded in what he wanted to accomplish with that conversation.
Which I think part of which is like having it. It's been this elephant in the room or something in their community that Pierce spends hours and hours talking about Fuentes, but doesn't bring him on, and then he brings him on. I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, the way you're describing it to me, it sounds like you think that he came out on top in terms of like net positive. But I almost think that other than him, like, I don't know, pooping his pants on live TV or whatever, I don't know how he was gonna. It seems like the mere fact that he's on it seems like a win already. But you seem to think, even in the nature of the conversation, that it wasn't a clear dub for Piers. Piers, who I don't trust, by the way.
Well, it wasn't
to get dubs.
I would say if Nick had remained flustered and hadn't regained conversational momentum, I actually would have viewed Piers as one of the best interviewers of Nick Fuentes or debaters of Nick Fuentes, who had like a mainstream-ish platform, who was able to press him. Because effectively, like, he would describe his position like, oh, well, you say you're not an anti-Semite, right? And then Nick would be like, yeah, I'm not an anti-Semite. I don't hate anybody. And then he would pull up a clip where it's like, yeah, fuck the Jews. And then like, say, and they would keep going down that line. Same thing where it's like, oh, well, you say you have Jewish friends. Let's bring up this clip. And then the clip is Nick saying like, Christians and Jews can never be friends. We've been enemies since the crucifixion of Christ. And so, he was really good at pressing him with clips on his sanitized narrative of his own perspectives. And I think that he did a really good job with that. But I think after that, Pierce wasn't as ready. So if I could split, if I could clone you with Pierce Morgan, where he had the clips ready, but then he was also ready to get into the nitty gritty and throw elbows in a debate, then I think it would have actually been a good conversation.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like what the pretense of the conversation is. You're a piece of shit, or like I shouldn't even be having you on. It feels like from what you're describing it, and I always find that those conversations to be quite odd, because it's like it, even from the position that Piers is taking, where he's showing all the bad stuff or whatever. It's not clear that he's doing so in a journalistic capacity. It seems more like he's doing it to try to justify his previous takes that Nick is a bad person, and in that sense, like. What's the point of that conversation? The point of the conversation is just to see how well he does under pressure, I guess. But like, what are we trying to get to? Are we trying to get to the truth of his views? Are those seriously in dispute? And for anyone who's watching, do they, when he denies being an anti-Semite, does anyone believe it? Just by the literal definition of that word?
Talk to you. So we had this really interesting conversation with LACTOID, who might still be in chat, but he's not available because he's working. LACTOID, and I think the Ashes of Creativity or something like that. He was like a center right guy, contrarian guy, who I was on a panel with, and they were talking about like, does Nick Fuentes matter? And I think that no offense, LACTOID, I think they bought into the sanitization. And so what they did is they heard the steel man, or they heard the strong arguments around men are dispossessed. They feel like they're being demographically replaced. They don't get as many economic opportunities as women. Minorities are vaunted in pop culture. Therefore, yes, Ryan Mullally was there as well. They're like, oh yeah, I agree with this sense of victimization. However, I draw the line at blaming the Jews. But what happens is, because it's effectively a sales funnel, right? That's what it is. It's a funnel where, people are trying to suck people into their ideology. So what's happening is, in my opinion, LACTOID and Ashes of Creativity and other right-wingers who bought into the sanitized narrative, they kind of fell down the sales funnel and then they stopped right here. But other people are going all the way in. And I think it's becoming easier for other people to go all the way in when they hear argumentative concession up to this point.
Yeah, it's one of the areas where I think this whole, because I have said that one of the reasons that I think the Groypers have longevity, or the potential for longevity, is that there's this feeling among people that they speak honestly and frankly. But it just doesn't follow, I think, the smell test here, where the entire foundation of their view on Jewish influence in societies, and specifically in America, is that they are the same tribe that rejected Christ. In other words, their sin is, rejecting God, and in some sense, killing God. And this is something that if there is something to be mad at a group of people over, surely it would be killing the Son of God, who is also God. And let's not get into the whole, what I think is the irrationality of the view that Jesus Christ is in fact God, and that God, that it's part of God's plan that Jesus die, and clearly it was part of the plan, and clearly Jesus, therefore, by those lights, committed suicide. And even if you could put some culpability onto the Jews as though it were something that God didn't want, putting all that aside, it really does seem that the foundational premise here is one that is religious in nature. It is sincerely felt, and it has to do with you guys reject the Messiah. You rejected the Messiah. You betrayed him, and you killed him. And how can that not be personal? How can that not be personal to these people? If they truly believe that, how can they not see it as one as something that in their nature, in the nature of what it is to be Jewish on their view, that it's something bad, and it's something that one ought to be ashamed about, and not sort of. Why would you associate with people who are the direct descendants of those who killed God?
Well, and that's where we have a split in the conservative movement between the Judeo-Christian narrative and the Christian narrative. Because the Judeo-Christian narrative is some of the things that you exactly said, that in order for Jesus Christ to do crucifixion, in order to die to forgive people's sins, he had to die. And so, God used the Pharisees and the Romans of instruments of his will, and therefore they should bear no hatred. Not just that, also like forgiveness is for everyone. So like mercy, forgiveness, God's judgment, all that kind of stuff. And so as a result, if God doesn't hate these people, then you shouldn't hate these people as well. And it goes to a lot of New Testament teaching. Also, I would say it goes to the Old Testament where it says that without Abraham, without Moses, without David, without Solomon, without the kingdom of Israel, without Judea, you don't have Christianity. And so there's this theological and historical debt that is paid to the Jewish people because they set the conditions that are necessary for Christianity to exist. That's the Judeo-Christian narrative. However, the Christian nationalist narrative that you said was very common in medieval Europe. And also, I like this term a lot, vestigial, okay? Unnecessary. And so a T-Rex's arms are vestigial. And so within the Christian nationalist perspective, Jews are vestigial. They broke the covenant with God because they rejected the Messiah. They are heretics because they rejected the Messiah. And therefore, whether or not they continue to exist has nothing to do with the flourishing of Christianity. So all of the Jews could live in Israel, and that's no skin off of the ass of a Christian, or the Muslims could genocide 7 million people in the middle of the desert, and it would be no skin off of the ass of a Christian nationalist because they're vestigial and they don't matter.
Given what you said, though, it just really does feel then it becomes a semantic debate about like what it means to hate something. Like, oh, no, I don't hate them. I just think that they killed my God. I think that they're responsible for a bunch of bad things. I don't like their influence in my country. I want them to have less of an influence in my country. To the extent that they have allegiances to Israel, they need to leave. And I'm mad about the situation we're currently in. And it all relates to that. So in what sense?
Can I have a second?
Yeah, go for it.
Chaos MOS 24 says, Conor takes so long to say nothing. I just described Christian nationalism and Judeo-Christian narrativization in detail. If you don't understand it, that's not my fault. If you're not entertained by it, you can go fuck yourself.
Did you ban him?
Bye.
Oh my God. You can come to my chat, whoever that was. We're free speech build. Sorry, he's a piece of shit.
You can free speech these nuts, KSMOS.
Listen. So what basically say is like, then we just get into like the nitty gritty of like, well, in what sense don't you hate them? Like you're mad at them. You think it's a problem that is broader than support for Israel. You think that they are also the descendants of the people who killed Christ. You don't like what they're doing. You think that they are continuing to do it by virtue of their tribe. To the extent that they are incidentally in support of your policy positions, it's just a matter of like a mere coincidence, or maybe sometimes it's even a trick. He has this view of people like Dave Smith, of Curtis Yarvin. And so, like, what are we talking about here? So you don't hate them? What's the difference? What is the practical difference? Because emotionally, you don't hate them? I see it. I mean, we can read your demeanor when you talk about these things. We can all see it. And so am I to believe that you don't actually have a significant feeling of dislike, of distrust, of dislike? I already said that, dislike or distrust. Like, what else would hatred be?
Well, and that's where I think we could just move past the word, because if we rely on hate, like let's say that we're just talking about like antipathy, like dislike, disgust, hatred, whatever. We could use like 10,000 synonyms and they would probably deny all of them, but while at the same time they would compete with them within the geopolitical stage. And so what the Christian nationalists are arguing for, in my opinion, is, because Nick said this during the conversation, they're arguing for what they believe Israel has, which is religious supremacy within their own country, control over immigration of people who come into the country that is religious supremacist, then also domination of all social institutions, domination of political institutions, domination of culture, and then also they view Christian, Judeo-Christians as rubes. They view Jews in the United States, because there's 7 million Jews in the United States, there's 7 million Jews in Israel. They view Jews in the United States as not actually American and a part of the American project and a part of the Christian nationalist project. They are a outgrowth of the state of Israel because they help control narratives about Jews, narratives about Israel, narratives about Zionism, narratives about this, narratives about that. So they actually do not consider Jews a part of their quote unquote nation or people.
Right. And I think it puts to it kind of puts into focus what the big issue with them is, which is they have a definition problem. What is the thing that they're trying to approximate if it's not an ethnicity? And to the extent that it's a religious group, it's Catholicism. I mean, Catholicism is not the major Christian form in the United States, or at least not the traditional one. It would seem preposterous that you are trying to, create this unity across time and space within America, centered around Catholicism. That is just absurd in my mind. That's a foreign religion so far as Americans are concerned, or in terms of the tradition there. So, like, I don't understand. Like, what is the X denominator? I think that they don't understand themselves in that sense. There's at least this pretense that there's something there. Maybe it is Christianity. Maybe it's whiteness. But those things seem like they haven't even started defining it.
In my mind, I think they want they want to advocate for this position, and they don't assume that they're going to achieve a maximalist position. So if somebody is an atheist or an agnostic and they become a Christian, that's a good thing. If a Christian becomes a devout Christian, that's a good thing. If somebody becomes a Christian nationalist, that's an even better thing. If a Christian nationalist climbs the social hierarchy and gains financial power, that way they can share their wealth with a Christian nationalist group, that's an even better thing. If they can seize political power and influence politics, that's an even better thing. And then even if they can seize the presidency and then advocate for Christian nationalist perspectives from the seat of the presidency, then they can do that thing. Now, ultimately, I had a conversation with Nick maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, and we talked about it, and he ideally would want a Christian imperium. He would want a monarch or dictator who was a devout Christian nationalist, who subordinated all other religions, and who ran American society as a Christian, actually this entire hemisphere, ran the entire hemisphere as a Christian nationalist project. But I'm with you that I don't think that's possible. If you look at secularization, if you look at demography, if you look at the increase or the decrease in church attendance, if you look at the decrease in birth rate, I think these are existential challenges to this worldview.
They don't want to do it. I mean, people don't want to be fucking, it's one thing to have the exuberance of young groiperism where they're all kind of like talking shit and being naughty or whatever. But these kinds of Christian nationalists, doctrinally, they want to stifle people. They want to impose themselves in people's lives. I have no sense that this, the ideology itself is going to be able to take root in a broad coalition of people, of Americans. That said, when I say that, I just mean like the middle, where most Americans are at. I do think that they'll have enough support to potentially have a significant impact on the Republican Party, and that's what I've been talking about this whole time. But I think the ideology itself and what the goals are seem, in some sense, when you really get past that, first line there, a little undefined. And they want to get more power, but is it power for power's sake? What's their policy agenda other than contradicting Israel and fucking up with foreign policy?
I think it's Project 2025 plus distancing themselves from Israel. So, and I want to address the super chat real quick. So Doobie says, you guys are misunderstanding Nick's international Jewry argument. He points to the fact that Jews tend to see themselves as a diaspora or a nation amongst other nations. And because they exist as a global tribe, they often act against the interests of the nation. They live to the benefit of the tribe's global interests. That's why he sees them as a fifth column. Doobie, I understand the perspective. I just think that this prerequisite plus an additional little bit of conspiracism and then plus fascism is how you get the Holocaust. So if I was to concede to material reality or to concede to some level of reality that diaspora Jews are sympathetic to the state of Israel, that's about as far as I want to go in concession before I start saying like, oh, actually, it's a global conspiracy for Jews to be a parasite amongst the nations to advocate in Israel's interest, and they've subsumed our government, because I think that these are all like descriptive preconditions for denaturalization, deportation, and maybe mass murder. So,
and also, I understand why Jews are jumpy. The scope of the argument. The scope is, it is premised on that these people are bad people, and no one's going to tell me that that's not totally apparent based on what Nick says. I watch him. These are bad people. They're part of the tribe that killed Christ. And that is a central feature of the analysis here, is look at every society where Jews have shown up. That's what they say. This is not my opinion. I'm just trying to say it. They'll say, look where they showed up in Rome, where they showed up here or there. They messed it up over there. Like, that is their argument. And I don't think it has to do really with like the, well, it is related to it, but it doesn't have to do essentially with the particular circumstances that Jewish people currently array themselves in the global context. I think it is deeper than that.
I think you kind of asked me a question that I think is important, which is like, what do these people want? And what I do think they want, and I'm not even trying to do this in order to be pearl clutchy, I'm trying to say this to be descriptive. I think they want a Christian supremacist society. Okay. And they go back to the Constitution. They talk about for us and our posterity. They go back to state constitutions in which there were like requirements to be Christian in order to hold political office.
Not Catholics.
They go back
they hated
to
Catholics. They weren't.
Yeah,
they weren't Catholics.
They ignore that part. They ignore that part. They ignore that the founding fathers hated Catholics. They also ignore the fact that most of the immigrants from Central and South America are Catholic and socially conservative. So they conveniently ignore those two things. But I do think that there's, for instance, like Nick would say that he's not a racial supremacist. He's a race realist, which means that on top of ethnicity, right? Because I don't think Nick is a stupid guy. I think that Nick, he does view whites in northern North America as a homogenization of Northern Europeans and Mediterranean Europeans. And then he views Catholicism as the correct faith because he was raised Catholic, but he views Christianity as an outspring of that faith that he views as actually true. He thinks that God manifested himself in a human being 2,000 years ago, died on the cross, ransomed everybody's sins, and that this is not an arbitrary question of life and death. This is the central question of existence. If you do not believe in Christ, if you do not believe in God, you will either go to purgatory or hell, and that is more important than what we do on our material plane. So when you have degenerate, socialist, hedonist, sexual freaks, such as yourself, convincing people that Christ isn't real or Christ is a myth, what you're actually doing is you're damning those people to hell or purgatory. And that's like an evil project that you are engaged in.
But then why did God let me do it?
Free will. God gave us he made us moral actors.
Yeah, no, it's, I don't even know why you buy this. I mean, the whole thing is filled with contradictions. The notion that,
I don't buy it. I'm being descriptive of his worldview.
I understand that's the response. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't resolve anything. But
wait, hold on. I don't agree with that.
Oh yeah?
You don't. So let's entertain for a moment, okay? Let's entertain for a moment that logically God incarnated himself as a human being, gave humanity a blueprint on how he wanted them to exist in life. Then he died in such a way that if you believe in his sacrifice, you will go to an eternal plane of bliss and be unified with the Godhead. But if you do not believe this story, you will either be in mindless oblivion, a lake of fire, or exist in some kind of purgatory where you have to spend thousands of years effectively contemplating your sins. So if this was real and it was literally true, why would your life not be oriented around getting as many people as possible to believe in this myth because it's necessary for their eternal salvation?
Yeah, you're saying like if it were true, why wouldn't you, and you believed it,
why would you not behave exactly as Nick behaves or as giga religious evangelicals behave?
Yeah, so I'm not saying that he doesn't believe it. Although query how often he reads scripture, query how often he goes to church, query how much it really seems to matter to him, such that he is defining the scope of what's good or bad as closer or farther away from God's inherent nature, or whatever he defines as good. I don't know. I'm not saying that he doesn't actually believe it, and I'm not saying that one who would believe it wouldn't be motivated to act in that particular fashion. What I'm saying is the worldview is incoherent, and the worldview entails contradictions. Sure. And it's not just the version that that Fuentes peddles. It's other versions too. And ultimately, like they live like all the other secular people do, but except for that like internal software.
I was about to say, except for the voluntary celibacy, but sure, go on.
I don't know, man. Like, do you think that he wants to get laid?
No, sorry for the groypers in chat. I do think he's like either asexual or maybe closeted homosexual or something. There's some hardware software problem going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know that what's doing the work here is he really, really wants to get laid, and so, but he's resisting that temptation, or like he's
I don't. I think he's probably asexual.
Yeah, I'm whether he's asexual.
If a lot of people accuse him of being a closet homosexual, and that's viewed as an unfair indictment of Nick by groypers, I would say Nick, like if Nick is not gay, then Nick is probably asexual. He probably has a very limited libido.
Yeah, I mean, like, how often does he talk about him personally wanting to have a family, wanting to build? You know, you brought up. Actually, I won't say anything, but I'll just say there are a lot of people who claim to profess to want to fit a certain mold of an ideal to follow, and they don't fit it, and they don't want to fit it, and they don't have a desire to fit it. And you can tell that I don't know, when they don't fit it, their admonishments that that's the best way to live your life kind of lose a little bit of their edge. And instead, what seems to be motivating a lot of the groypers are memes, ownage, and like edginess for its own sake, and anger and hatred. And I don't know what else there is to say. And humor, not just like negative emotions, humor and togetherness and a feeling of community. But I don't think that it's, I don't know where this goes in terms of if they had access to power. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to.
Access to power actually kind of gets scary because I would think that MAGA is about. I think MAGA is about as close to power as they're going to get. And I would look at church attendance. I would look at increasing secularization. I would look at the decrease in birth rate. I would look at the increase in multiracial families. I would look at the immigration, effectively like a immigration hiatus right now. If it's not being enshrined into law by Congress, we're probably going to return to some level of status quo when we get the next president, even if it's J.D. Vance. He might be, due to economic and social pressure, he might be more conducive to like Central and South American immigration than Trump was. So I think we're going to return to some level of status quo, and they're going to be bitter and they're going to be very disappointed. So I think the Christian nationalist groyper movement kind of has the writing on the wall. But as far as like, instead of talking about what they're going to achieve with political power, the way that I view Nick is the way that, sorry, I'm going to bring it up, but like Hassan Piker and Destiny to a degree, and also Vosh to a degree, where the goal is not to, I'm trying to tell my community, which is small, like it's only 100 to 150 people, but I'm trying to tell them, work your jobs, pay your bills, take care of your family, take care of your community, work out, be a normal person. That's what Grill Hodism is about. We just happen to be passionate about politics. Whereas I think a lot of these communities thrive on the social dysfunction and shared social grievance of a tribe. And I think that's Destiny to a lesser degree because he's liberal, so he's tolerant of other tribal ideologies. But those other three in particular, Vosh for sure, Hassan Piker for sure, and Nick for sure, I think their popularity comes from being dissident false prophets.
Dissident false prophets. You talked about disappointment a little bit right there. I think that there's going to be a disappointment with no matter what on the immigration front because you.
Can you get it just a little bit closer to the mic? I bumped you, but some people in my chat are saying you're quiet.
So I'm sort of wondering out loud the kind of world we would live in if some of these people got access to power, and I think that there are supposed things that are wrong with this country that they point to, and they want to pin their blames on particular groups or all their problems with women, their problems in the labor market, whatever. And on some of these issues, I just feel like they are in the position of talking shit about Trump at all, not just because Trump is fucking up, because he is, but also because they don't have to deal with the reality on the ground. And the reality on the ground is, as far as immigration is concerned, unless you're willing to really impose a terror state to the degree of some insane authoritarian regime and go in with the military in an all of society effort, these millions of people who are here illegally, it is too late to deport them all. You can't do it. The logistical challenges alone are insurmountable. The amount of money it would take, it is not going to happen. And so I view that kind of similarly to some of their other goals, and maybe it is similar to Hassan in that they are proposing solutions in society that will never and can never be actualized, not under anything approaching the current society's tolerance. And the reason I bring that up is just to say that, like, even though I do think there's a lot of energy behind these movements, I am concerned about the Groypers. I also, one of the other reasons I'm concerned is I don't know what they're going to do when they confront reality, when they actually catch the car and have to deal with power and what that will mean. It can't be good for certain groups, but I don't know that it'll be all they're hoping for.
Well, it won't be. And actually, if you look at Nick's conversation with Piers Morgan, he says that. He says that Trump has failed. Trump has failed to deliver what he's actually talked about. The quote unquote mass. They went over the tweet where they said that Donald Trump is not actually executing policy. He's engaging in performative cruelty in order to please his audience. And Piers Morgan was like, wait, you of all people agree with mass deportation. Why are you the one saying this? And Nick actually, I think quite astutely said this. I think he said that the deportation numbers are around 300,000. So effectively what's going on is, like, maybe illegal immigrants are a little bit, sneakier, getting around, going to work sites when they know ICE isn't around, all that kind of stuff. But effectively, if we've only deported 300,000 people and there allegedly was 10 million let in by Biden, and I think the population was estimated already between 11 and 15 million, 300,000 is piss in the ocean, right? It's nothing. And so what Trump's doing, or what the Trump administration is doing, because they know they will not be able to get 20 million people out of the United States before they lose political power, is they are making sure that the ones that they do get are cruel, where it will disincentivize people from coming to the United States, but also the people who remain in the United States will be scared in order to leave their houses. That way they can have this bone that they throw to their audience of, oh, you thought we weren't being tough on immigration? We just beat the shit out of like a 40-year-old woman with no criminal record and sent her to Nicaragua.
Yeah, you get all the bad stuff and none of the good stuff with that, because on that policy, you get all of the costs associated with actually doing the stuff. And you also impose additional reliance costs, costs on society when it comes to like showing up to your court dates, in terms, obviously, economic effects in that, and imposing people like fear. All of this is part and you don't get the benefit of, assuming it were a benefit, getting them all out there. To get them all out of there, what you need is a kind of security state. You need a kind of Gestapo-like agency, not that ISIS,
which Nick is not opposed to, and he's trying to normalize that idea. Weirdly enough, Peter Thiel and Palantir are potentially enabling that. They're setting up the conditions through which a Chinese-style security state could be implemented.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is where I would want someone like Piers to get into it with Nick. And I don't know if he did this, but I want someone to sit him down and say, so Nick, tell us, how is it that you want to implement? You say that what we're seeing from Trump is pansy shit. What would you do? If you had the power, how would you deport something like 13, 14 million people? Go. That's what I want more of. I want, because on this issue of like, oh, hang on, Nick, you said that women deserve this, like that kind of shit. I don't know that it's sticky.
Yeah, it's culture war dunks.
Yeah, and part of the reason why it's not are because of people like Piers who are like, we're all done with the woke. So like Piers, in some ways, is a big hypocrite because he was part of this movement to try to remove any level of decency. I mean, any kind of standard that you're going to impose on Nick and call Nick out and say, aren't you a bad person, Nick, is something that would apply to Trump. It is ludicrous to say,
times 1,000.
Yeah, like Nick is so offensive, but Trump isn't. And so he comes, I haven't seen it, but like anyone who takes that view where they have no standard of decency for anyone else, to come up to Nick and say like, hey, aren't you hating of Jews? Like, go fuck yourself. You guys are the motherfuckers who have no standards, and now you're going to be Johnny come lately and say, I've grown a pair and I want to actually call out some people who are saying some hateful shit. Get fucked. These are
I think we're, to some degree though, I think we're all guilty of the friendship or ally bias, where whenever a friend or an ally gets in trouble, we use sanitized language and we speak softly, and maybe we concede to factual reality, but we try to basically steel man their position and why they fucked up and all this, that, the other. Whereas when it's an enemy, and this is probably with me with Hassan Biker, there's zero charity, zero attempt to steel man, zero this, zero that, because fuck them, because they're a part of the enemy.
But let's talk about that a little bit, because maybe we'll get into it. I felt a little bit of that with some of the Ethan Klein stuff. We can talk about that in a bit. But just to start off with, why is Nick an enemy and not a friend of Trump? You would think they'd make natural allies. Here's a guy who, major policy agreement on immigration at a bare minimum. But part of the reason why Nick was cast out of polite Republican society, at least on a facial, superficial level, is because of his views related to identity and it going too far. And so
it might even be Israel.
And maybe for Israel. Yeah, maybe Israel, but there's Israel critic.
No, I was going to say it might even be more isolated, because you're talking about identity. Trump and Jared Kushner and Stephen Miller, they're Zionist conservatives. So they believe in the Judeo-Christian narrative, which has been dominant in American politics for decades. The problem with Nick, even though he has political momentum, is that he's a Christian nationalist.
Right, but then that critique goes through. Then that Groyper critique actually goes through, which is to say, you guys don't give a shit about discrimination, racism, bigotry until and unless it affects Israel or Jewish people. That critique goes through, that it is selective, and it doesn't really have to do with how vicious you are as a person. I mean, think about all the vicious things that normal backbenchers, members of Congress, Republicans say about like Muslims, to say nothing of what they have to say.
Oh, it got crazy.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And so that criticism goes through. And that's why, like, for me, Piers, okay, maybe he got Nick in this, and maybe, go on, sorry.
No, I'm sorry for yapping so much, but I just want to point this out for everybody. 20 years ago, okay, who was it? George Bush launched a almost unilateral, but the coalition of the willing invasion of Iraq. In the entire time, he was differentiating between jihadists and Muslims. Okay, he was saying, no, we're not at war with Islam. We're not at war with all Muslims. Plenty of Muslims are great people. We have a lot of Muslim patriots in the United States. We're at war with radical jihadist terrorists. And while plenty of conservatives said fucked up shit about Muslims, it was, relatively speaking, that was the tone that was set by the president of the United States and the Republican Congress. Now, because we had Donald Trump, who said, nah, it's all Muslims, and we're gonna do a Muslim ban and screw them all and this, that, the other, while he's being boys with Saudi Arabia, which is kind of weird, but whatever. Yeah. He opened up the floodgates where effectively you see Laura Loomer, you see Republican members of Congress who are saying, like, no, Islam is the enemy of the Western world and all Muslims are complicit. If we are bigoted against them through legislation or culture, it doesn't matter. Fuck them. And that's the tenor in modern American politics. It has degenerated. It is worse.
Yeah, I completely agree when it comes to people. I'm just going to say it really is a huge problem with the Republican Party. They will say unhinged shit and it doesn't matter at all. And the normal reaction from their base is good in these, like, whatever, the vice signals. And I was happy to see Sabrina Carpenter come out and say something, and she, like, whatever, ratioed the fucking administration. But it really does, it makes me triggered when I see such a blatant double standard from peers and others. And maybe let's get into the whole, like, Ethan Klein thing real quick for a second. So I get people in my replies and, like, at this point, like, by the dozen coming into my VCs to be like, why do you give a shit about this? They deserve it, whatever. And, like, 95% of the people who come on to talk about it don't know shit about facts of why these people would deserve it. And all I do is I flip around the scenario and it relates to someone that they like. And all of a sudden, trivially, the kind of thing that I'm talking about is not supported. So the example I give, just to ground it out a little bit, is suppose that you, right, all of a sudden, you just reacted to the Tim Pool whatever conversation, right? Tim Pool and Piers Morgan. Suppose that Piers Morgan comes at you with a copyright lawsuit, doesn't even send you a demand letter, lawsuit, because you might have said something negative about him. And then Piers Morgan tries to pass it off as, oh, this is just to protect the React community, ain't it? It's just to protect the React community. And I asked that question to people, and I asked, would we rally around Conor? Would we say that it's horrible, actually, to have this pretense, to have this lie, and even though just in this hypothetical, Piers hates counterpoints, wouldn't we say that it's like, kind of fucked up to negotiate these issues of speech using the copyright statute? And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I'm taking the side of the tankies. I'm taking the side of the lefties. I'm just trying to ingratiate myself with a new audience. And I find that pathetic. And I find it's not just like it's something internal. Maybe it's foolhardy for me to try to like purify my own audience of it, but it's not just something that we can levy at Republicans and at others.
I like this. I like this a lot. So one of the things that I think we kind of landed on, which was really interesting, and it was an interesting conversation with PF Young as well, was that you identify as liberal, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you are concerned with, and it seems like one of your primary motivators, and correct me at any point, is maximizing reasonable human freedom. Right?
Yeah.
Like you don't think that people should be able to flay each other alive for their own gratification, but you think that they should be as free to negotiate reality as they can as long as they're not hurting or killing other people.
Yeah.
And so within your moral framework, using I think slap lawsuit is probably the wrong term, but using a intimidating lawsuit where you know that you actually have a really poor legal standing, but you're using the cost of a lawsuit to intimidate your rivals out of a position or intimidate your rivals out of criticizing you. Yeah, that's obviously bad for free speech and bad for free expression and bad for maximal human liberty.
So do you agree with it, Conor?
What's that?
Do you agree with what he's doing there for? And do you agree that he's gotten enough scrutiny for it?
So he hasn't got enough scrutiny because everybody, or at least everybody on my side of the world, is sympathetic to Ethan Klein over the tankies. What I would say, though, is I would differentiate between the cases. So I would actually differentiate from Caseytron from Denims. I would actually differentiate those cases, but we could get into those details if you wanted to respond first.
Yeah, no, I definitely do because, and I heard Hutch say this too on Live and Learn. He's like, I'm actually more sympathetic to Caseytron. And everyone seems to be saying this, even Ethan and Hila. They're like, I'm actually sympathetic to her position.
I'm sympathetic to her because she's broke, but she violated the law worse than the other parties.
I understand that. But the fact that we are more sympathetic for someone who violated the law more should indicate to us that it's not the violation of the law that anyone cares about. And given that nobody cares about that, really, then we're all just playing this game when what's going on. And I feel like I wasn't having enough scrutiny in my initial reaction where I was, and acknowledge that it's a very, very strong case. What's happening here is an attempt to bully people on issues that are collateral to the copyright statute and copyright issue. And I heard and saw Ethan and Hila say things like, that was such a sincere apology, referring to Caseytron.
Oh, I lost some respect for the clients on that coverage, but I want you to continue before I interrupt.
No, sure,
with it.
like, lost some respect, dude. Like, that is fucked up. That is like,
they're lying.
They're full on lying. And
no. Tell me that Caseytron wrote that apology.
It's he like, obviously she didn't. Obviously that was a bargain for negotiated language between attorneys and the different parties, and they signed on to it. And no one gives a shit. And the reason is the same reason. I think, and so much other groupthink is, this is a target worth going after. But then I will ask these people who call up, and again, we have to do it separate from the infringement, right? Because if we're going to be in favor, I can imagine a certain circumstance where I would be in favor of some like bullshit technical lawsuit that was technically like very, very strong case going after people for shit that's like totally collateral. But there would be some threshold where I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to want me to show me like this person did something really, really horrific. And so I ask about Casey, and like no one has a clue. Like what is a horrible thing that she did? No one will be able to say like,
Right.
so I'll give you some examples. People have said, oh, the skulls were sent and CPS. No one has been able to provide any evidence that she was like involved in that occurring. And then someone else said something to me. Hutch maybe said it. We had to cut off after 5 minutes because we had some arbitrary time limit or something. He goes, well, they laughed about it afterward. Really? Laughing about a bad thing happening to a person is justification for that? Like, there are people who laughed at Tim Pool after the shooting thing happening. There are people who laugh at bad shit happening. Like, it's not. You need to show some sort of culpable conduct that rises to a level where we'd support it. But I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. One of the reasons why I care about it is because I'm getting pushed back on it so hard, where people are still trying to maintain that it's about copyright. But when I saw that reaction by the clients to the settlement, and they were like, this was such a sincere apology. No one go after her. And then he said something else. He says, I understand like what position she's in. Passive voice, removing himself from it. That she's
not the position that we're putting her in.
I understand it. And then to add insult to injury, they switch over to Hassan and say, Hassan, aren't you a bad guy? Why didn't you support her? Support her.
Yeah, that was
we did.
Part of the apology that was jumping the shark for me.
I'm
by
like,
the way.
whoa, dude, there's something fucked up going on here. And I'm almost like, I'm glad I was. I wish I was more scrutinizing in my initial reaction, because that this is fucked up.
Well, yeah. So I want to break this down. Zero Fuck says, imagine getting hung up on that, and he's from Sitch and Adams community, I think.
Oh, he's
what it showed.
He's a complete
Zero
idiot, dude.
Have some chill, bro. Number one, have some chill.
Have you ever read his?
This is an interesting situation.
Can you just say, have you ever read his like Twitter posts? They're like so long and like incomprehensible. The dude can't write. He's a complete idiot. But I'm happy he's in your chat.
Yeah. Let me hit it though. So I deal with copyright. Okay. Zero Fucks is like, I just got here.
No. All right. Everything stands. My entire position stands.
So I deal with copyright for my breakdowns. And effectively what I understand copyright, it's copyright is kind of like when you see it, I guess, is kind of like the standard or whatever. But effectively what they're trying to do is they're trying to prevent you from taking somebody's intellectual property, posting it somewhere else, profiting from that without compensation to the original party, and without the original party's permission, if you're going to profit from it. That's what they're trying to avoid with copyright law. And so there's things like fiction versus nonfiction. There's things like the amount of original content used. There's things like, are you fulfilling the same purpose of the original content? There's all these considerations that go into a copyright judgment. And so when it comes to denims, at least according to Nicholas DiOrio, has doubled the runtime of the original piece through commentary. In my opinion, that is transformative. You're watching somebody who dislikes the Kleins, you're doubling the runtime, you're engaging in commentary, you're covering drama. That's transformative. And if that was found by a court, I would be like, sick. That's actually based. Now, when it comes to Casey Tron, what Casey Tron allegedly did, which is not that bad and doesn't deserve for her to be sued into the ground, Casey Tron.
Wait, can we just pause right there? Because
Sure.
I do want to hear it. You disagree with the decision for Ethan Klein to sue Casey Tron?
I actually think that there is a better case to sue Casey Tron. I don't think that it's worth it in any sense of the word for human effort to sue Casey Tron.
Another way of saying that is it's bad.
Instrumental bad?
Why is this difficult? See, I got this with Hutch, like where it's like I can't make a judgment. I'm like, I wouldn't do it. That's what he got to. But like,
okay, can I explain the nuance?
Bad, right?
Well, hold on. So I'm being a smartass here, but it's because I got into Wilson debates recently. So like, I don't even know the difference between intrinsic and instrumental, but I'm assuming like instrumental has something to do with utility, and I'm assuming intrinsic has something to do with like the essence of the thing or something.
Yeah. So I'm not speaking in any respect to that. Whatever you view bad to be, whatever you think someone ought not do, I'm assuming you'd be comfortable saying,
sure,
you ought not stab yourself.
But here's where I think it gets, we can get into utility, okay? So here's what Twitch has been accused of that I also think is bad behavior. Twitch,
wait, also bad? Are you assuming that it's bad then? I'm like, why are you scared to answer the question? Can I ask that? Are you fearful that you're going to get maybe some of the criticism that I get when I say this stuff? When it turns out we have the same position, then what's stopping you from saying it's bad?
Allow me to explain. Give me some rope, please. Okay. So, what Twitch has been accused of, Hassan Piker's been accused of, Casey Tron's been accused of, Denims has been accused of, is non-transformative commentary. They're effectively stealing other people's intellectual property by watching other people's content for hours without commentary. I view that as bad because effectively what's happening is the original content creators are not getting them. They might be getting exposure, but they're not getting the same level of monetary compensation that they would if the people had checked out the original content. Now, I'm a rising tides raise all boats kind of guy. So for me, I'm not going to waste my time caring about copyright. It's not that big of a deal to me. However, I could see how that would piss people off, that effectively Casey Tron, Denims, and Hassan are making 6 or 7 figure careers. Like I think Hassan makes 7 figures off of what amounts to theft. And so from a utility perspective, if Ethan Klein sues Casey Tron and smashes someone for non-transformative commentary, it's bad because you're hurting a human being. You're hurting Casey Tron. She is not a rich person. She is not as wealthy or successful as Denims. That's the bad element of what Ethan Klein has done.
Does she deserve it in your mind? Does she deserve that lawsuit?
Yeah, probably. But I also tend to sympathize with people who are getting their shit kicked in, even if they're bad people.
And so you're glad she was sued because she deserved it.
I'm glad that there's people who are getting a shot across the bow for stealing other people's property. I do not think it's good to sue impoverished people in order to intimidate others. I think that's crazy.
I think that this is the part that we need to get to. Like, if there were actually a some kind of concern related to the copyright statute that was motivating this, and that's what I felt was going on, then perfect. Then I think you and I probably are aligned on that. Though what you would expect there, right, isn't first a lawsuit. You would expect DMCA and demand letters. But
sure. But the whole... I think Ethan Klein would have done a better social good if instead of suing these parties, he had said, here's fair use, here's how it works. I could F you up, but I'm not going to.
Right, but that just... And this gets to, I think, the heart of it, which is, by his own lights, he wanted the lawsuits, and he doesn't care about copyright because
he's Jewish, so he subscribes to.
Oh, stop with that!
Eye for an eye.
Don't make it like that.
He subscribes to Old Testament morality.
Don't make it like that.
He doesn't believe in turning the other cheek.
Don't make it like that. What I'm trying to say is we would not support it. So I'm going to give you the same exact facts, and you're going to tell me if it's bad. Tim Pool copyright strikes you reacting to his debate with me. And the same thing. He says it's for the. I want to create precedent to protect against Sony and Disney, and I'm just and that's why I'm suing you. Now, do you think that that would be a good lawsuit? No, you wouldn't say that.
I think against Casey Tron, it's a legally justifiable lawsuit. I think it's bad.
Oh, wait, no, I'm giving you. You think it's bad?
It's bad. It's morally bad.
Okay. I think that I've come to that position. I took the position before where it's like I'm okay with it, and I think it's a strong legal case. But the more I get into the motive here and really pulling that apart, I do think it's bad because I think what's going on is something that we wouldn't accept as applied to our own side. And if it were the case,
it's just bullying.
But it's bullying with the pretense and with the kind of
to be clear, I believe bullying is bad.
Okay.
Sorry. So let me put it this way. I think that we have a limited time in our lives, and we should use our time as wisely as possible because unfortunately, 50 years from now, you and I, maybe 100 years from now, you and I are both going to be dead.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we have a limited amount of time. So Ethan Klein has been blessed with millions of dollars, a large fan base, and all that kind of stuff. And he has a good life. He's running businesses, making millions of dollars, taking care of his kids, taking care of his family, all that kind of stuff. I would like, and maybe he does this, maybe he doesn't, I don't know. I would rather see Ethan Klein continue to do his show, continue to be entertaining, continuing to be this, that, the other. But I would like to see him take his platform and use it for the collective good. If it was dog rescues, fundraising for Gaza, charitable organizations, whatever, take a slice of what God has given you or life has given you and pay it forward in society. And when I see people like Ethan Klein, who have been given so much by the universe, and instead what they do is they spend their time in petty squabbles with poor people, effectively threatening to sue them into the poorhouse, I think that even if the other person is bad, even if Casey Tron's a piece of shit, that's irrelevant.
Yeah, there are
Ethan
a lot of
Klein
pieces of shit.
is wasting the gifts that the universe has given him, and I think that is bad.
Okay. And it kind of gets me to like the point, a broader political point, so we can transition away from the the drama shit, which is like,
I'll back you up, dude. I'll come on to Live and Learn. I'll fight Hutch. I'll be like,
No,
Pisco's right. Fuck you,
dude. To me, it's like I don't really
Get over
care
here,
if people if people have a difference of opinion. I'm all game to like hear them out and to have a conversation. But I've had like a bunch of calls where people are like, "Don't you understand? She deserves it. Fuck them. Fuck them." I'm like, what do they do? And it's like, this is stuff that we would not. It wouldn't even be bad on for like, 'cause we make fun of bad shit happening to people all the time, even when they don't deserve it, even when it's like really bad, like jokes about people who've been killed, jokes about like individuals who didn't deserve it, like that's what you get. Da 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 da. People have been clowning them, for example, on like Erica Kirk, etc. Say nothing of like Kyle Kalinske. We all think it's base. They would not be grounds, and so like I hear the kind of that shit, and then I start to like get in my head about like the whole political.
Can I black pill you on something?
Yeah, go for it.
70% of the population who engages with anything, but also particularly Twitch and YouTube politics, they're non-playable characters, or they are so dumb they might as well be non-playable characters. And what I mean by that is my chat is brilliant.
Yeah.
My chat is brilliant. I have 110 souls. They're all 3,000 IQ, Giga Chads, and Giga Stacies. They're all brilliant. And what happens is when I'm talking, they're building a mind palace of the words that I'm saying, and they're getting like these beautiful imaginations of politics and history and the world and this, that, the other. And that's who my chat is. I don't know about your chat, but that's my chat.
Yeah.
Whereas 70% of the people who participate in this space, they actually don't have anything going on up here. It's just words and noise and kind of like a storm of associations. And so what they're really responding to is the emotion of you and I talking.
Yeah.
So if I get withdrawn and passive and I concede to you and you're barking at me and yelling at me and pointing your fingers, you won. That's good. Your tribe has won. Whereas if the inverse happens, where you say something and then I'm yelling at you and then you're backing away from a position, my tribe won. It's time to celebrate. Pisco's an idiot. Pisco's a moron. Pisco's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And so as a result, that's really probably 70 to 80% of what's happening in the Twitch and YouTube political sphere is not actually smart people talking about cool ideas and then building mind palaces. It's actually dumbasses cheering on their favorite tribalist leader.
Yeah, for me, it kind of informs a little bit of my thinking of like what to do when Democrats have power. There've been these debates that have been going on, which are kind of like, well, when the Democrats take power, what ought they do? Oh, they should like utilize the DOJ in the same political fashion that Trump was doing, and to try to go after Republicans, or they should immediately launch like baseless investigations into every nook and cranny. And I wonder what my lines are. And I'm curious what you would like to see, because assuming that you vote for a Democrat, which is not at all confirmed that you would in 2026, well, let me ask you this. Wait, hang on. Are you planning to vote for a Democrat in 2026 before the presidential?
In the midterms, I think I'm voting anti-MAGA. So effectively, if there's like a local thing, because we do ordinances and like state level decisions and stuff, I'm of course going to just vote my conscience along technocratic policies. When it comes to representatives, if there's a moderate Republican who's anti-MAGA, I'm going to vote for them. If there's a Democrat who is anti-MAGA, as long as they're not like a Maoist revolutionary, I'll probably vote for them over anybody who's MAGA.
Like Mamdani, a Maoist revolutionary, right?
I probably will not vote for a Mamdani character, but I would vote for a Newsom character.
Someone in the chat asked me, Fuentes or Mamdani, who would you pick? And I think that you would vote for Fuentes.
Fuentes. Fascism is better than communism. They're both bad, but
wild.
Fascism is better than communism.
Anyway, what would you want a Democratic Congress to do? What do you think that should be do you think there should be any? Because you had that conversation where you were against what is it called? A Nuremberg style situation. What do you want? Do you want just desserts? Do you want investigations? What do you want?
So I know that you might not like this answer because it effectively says solve all problems, but I have 4 specific problems that I think should be addressed. So wealth inequality, rapid demographic change, existential technological shifts, dissolution of the social fabric. So existential technological shifts, I don't think we're going to be able to do anything about that. Capitalism is creative destruction. All we can do is regulate. When it comes to dissolution of the social fabric, rapid demographic change, I think that we finally just need a sane immigration policy. And what I mean by that is since the 90s, America has capitalized on a porous border in order to take advantage of illegal labor. Corporations inside the United States have been able to pay under the table, less than minimum wage, no benefits, and abuse those laborers in order to keep products cheap. And those people have taken those jobs because it's a better economic opportunity than staying in Central or South America in a failed state. So what we need is we just need a secure border that can allow the exact amount of workers into our economy that's good for the United States, but is mutually beneficial to both parties and controls for crime within a reasonable limit. And so I would like a Democrat to not engage in the mass deportation operations of Donald Trump, but to engage in sane immigration policy.
Got it. But what you mean, border security and helping countries nearby with their situation.
Well, in making it so for instance, we have seasonal laborers, right? I think there's a seasonal laborer visa. So why can't we make a seasonal laborer visa a stepping stone to a work visa, and a work visa a stepstone to citizenship that is like it's pre-required. It's required that you basically follow these logical steps in order to become a citizen of the United States.
The first thing you talked about with the Democratic majority was this immigration policy, which I'm sorry my chat kind of blew up when you said you would prefer Fuentes over Mamdani. So I hate to bring it back to this, but
that's fine.
What the fuck? Because like Mamdani would be much more likely to do that policy than Fuentes, who wants to get rid of all legal immigration. And
listen,
that was the first thing you thought about.
I don't want to get into the details because it's going to be annoying. If I had to choose between Pinochet and Maduro, I would pick Pinochet. If I had to choose between Hitler and Stalin,
but it's Pinochet.
I would pick Hitler.
It's Pinochet and Mamdani.
I don't think Fuentes is Pinochet, and I think the Constitutional Republic. I think the Constitutional Republic is strong enough that he wouldn't be able to implement his agenda. But the same thing that you argue for Mamdani.
Wait, but it wouldn't survive Mamdani. So then distinguish them.
No.
I think you like him. I think there's part of you who likes Fuentes. I think that I think you respect him.
Yeah, there is. Do you know why?
Why?
Because Nick Fuentes is appealing to these things. He's talking about wealth inequality. He's talking about rapid demographic change. He's talking about existential technological shifts. He's talking about the dissolution of the social fabric. And I think that leftists, because they analyze the world through a materialist lens, they don't. Number one, they say rapid demographic change is good. Number two, their solutions to wealth inequality suck ass. Number three, their solutions to existential technological shifts suck ass. Number four, they say, oh, you're sad that the social fabric is dissolving. Well, everybody on the planet is technically your brother. So go ahead and embrace universal humanity. And I think all of that shit's cringe.
Yeah, but Fuentes is an anti-Semite and he's a fascist, and I don't know, like,
listen, I love Jews. I'll hide the Jews in my attic. It's very small, it's very hot, but I'll help out my Jewish friends. It's fine. I'm a white cis het Christian male who's a mixed economy capitalist who loves guns. I'll be fine.
Okay.
In the fascist dystopia.
Last question on this line. Are you glad that someone like Nick is speaking up?
No. The reason why I'm not glad is because Nick is a symptom of a disease that goes much deeper than what Nick is talking about. And also Nick's cures are worse than the disease. So Nick, you basically just asked me is like, are you happy that you're having a flare up of herpes? And I'm like, no.
I know, but I
I'm
remember
not
your
happy.
little chart. I remember your little chart, and Fuentes scored higher than Trump. And so surely, if the alternative,
I have to take a look at it. Should I pull it up?
Yeah, I mean, you could.
And I think I've talked about this before. The reason why I think Nick scores higher than Trump is partially competence. I think where he runs away from Trump is like intelligence and cunning. I think Nick is infinitely more intelligent than.
So
I
guess I'm just not
Fuentes
sure why.
Sorry, real quick. I'm gonna read it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna read it. Fuentes, I think, is wildly intelligent. I put him at a 10. For cunning, I put him at a 10. Neocon, 0. Constitutional Republican, 0. Social conservative, 6. He's a Catholic. Fiscal conservative, 0. National conservative, 10. Burking conservative, 0. So the only reason why he pulled away is because of like social conservatism, national conservatism, and intelligence. That's where he beat Trump.
God damn. What about dexterity?
Right. No, we have to work on it. Like, I don't want to work on it right now, but in general, we need to work on the chart because
we need to work on it.
There's some flaws in my chart.
All right, let's if you don't mind, I want to push to some hard politics stuff, if you don't mind. If that's okay.
Go for it.
All right. So first, on the continuing issue of the actually, I want your take on this. The strikes. You're against the strikes, right? On the drug stuff. Drug boats.
Yes. And I want to talk about that in more detail though, because obviously I've advocated in the past for invading South America. So I want to get into a little bit of detail. But my dog's scratching at the door. Can I be back in 2 seconds?
Yeah, go for it. That Fuentes shit's wild, man. I feel like I'm pushing Conor into craziness.
All right. Can we talk about the strikes?
Sure. Yeah. Sorry if you heard that. Yeah. So I had a caller from the military call in and say basically, hey, what's your view on the strikes and how far does it go? And I gave him an analysis about why I think it's murder, why I think even if the rules of war apply, it's a war crime, why I think the rules of war don't apply, such that we can do these kinds of strikes. I also talked to Avi about it, Avi Bitterman, the doctor. And I took the view that, there's some ways in which certain grunts on the ground probably would not be liable. Maybe they wouldn't have the requisite intent to commit murder because they're like unaware of what's going on. Maybe there could be some kind of defense of justification if they're not sort of clued into the fact that they're about to commit a war crime until they think that they're authorized. Similar to like self-defense where you have, it's not the case that you're
I think it would be at the officer level.
Well, what I mean to say is though, I think that if there are pilots down to individual people who are on helicopters, whatever, who A, know the nature of the mission and notwithstanding that, execute the mission, I think they should be charged with murder. I don't really have a reason they shouldn't be. Other than like as a matter of policy, perhaps like discretion, we don't charge them and we just like use them as witnesses or something to get the people up the chain. But in general, I don't know why we wouldn't be open to charging them with murder.
So I have no, how do I say this? For a drone operator, an enlisted 22-year-old who just got done with boot camp and he's pulling the trigger or whatever, I don't know if he has like the requisite legalistic knowledge in order to know whether or not he's authorized to take that strike. The officer who's over him, though, like the lieutenant, the captain, the major, or whatever, they should absolutely be consulting with the JAG and saying, like, is this legal? Will you defend me if I get, criminally charged or something like that? And the the admiral who was in charge of this operation, I think he resigned. Now, it was never confirmed that he resigned because of objections over the new drone strike program, but I think he has good reason to resign. if you'll give me a little bit of rope,
Mhm.
the authorization for use of military force that I understand them to be operating under, because there isn't another one that's existing, is a 2001 AUMF for 9/11, which it specifically states that like jihadist terrorism, any Al-Qaeda, its affiliates, any terrorist organization that might conduct a terror attack against the United States, the president has authorizations to use any and all means. It's very vague, but any and all means necessary in order to prevent effectively another 9/11. My problem is that I do not think that they are using this AUMF in good faith. Tren de Aragua, to my knowledge, in the way that it could be classified as a foreign terrorist organization, is not because they've conducted a terrorist operation within the United States. It's because they use like racketeering and murder and political assassination in order to maintain power within South America. I don't think Tren de Aragua or any of the cartels have any intent to commit a terrorist offense in North America. What they do is they traffic drugs here, which finances their operations. And so, in my opinion, they're wildly abusing the AUMF. They're effectively not using it in good faith. And these military strikes are being done without authorization from Congress. So if we want to go to war with the cartels, if we want to go to war with Tren de Aragua, you need a new AUMF. And I don't think there's the will in Congress to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that it's absolutely, a good analysis that both from like an international perspective, I think that these are war crimes under the rules of war. But I also think that we lack like U.S. domestic law authorization for these strikes, and that they feel other kinds of crimes under U.S. law, and to the extent that U.S. law has incorporated international law.
Oh yeah, like the double tap on people who are holding on to wreckage, killing people who are not combatants. That's the other thing. They keep calling these people like confirmed terrorist organizations. There was one of the boats that they reported on that had 11 people on it. And when they did the news conference, they said that, oh yeah, this is an organization that's been accused of drug and human trafficking. And I'm like, did we just kill 3 gang members and 8, asylees / economic migrants? Did we just murder 8 innocent people?
Yeah,
it's fucking crazy.
Who the fuck knows? Yeah, no, I hear you there. But what I'm trying to get at is a little different. So I understand that one could raise a defense that, well, I thought it was authorized because I thought we were attacking Al-Qaeda. Right? You could say, I'm a drone strike operator. All I do is press the button. And they told me that this was Al-Qaeda. They told me that these were actual combatants. And then I would be like, okay, then that seems like a justified use of force from that perspective. From that individual, he was justified in what he did because he was reasonably under the impression that these people were combatants. What I don't think should be an excuse is, well, I didn't know it was illegal. That's what I don't think should be an excuse. So if there's a drone operator who's told, hey, we're going after drug traffickers, and we're going after them, and here's where they are, and you're getting an order to shoot at this drug trafficker, and he's like at least has that bare amount of knowledge. He knows he's a drug trafficker. He knows what they're doing. They're coming into America to traffic drugs, and he's ordered to kill that person. I think that's murder, dude. And maybe we don't charge that drone operator because of discretion and we go up the chain, but I don't think it's an excuse to be like, well, I thought it was okay. I thought it was legal. I don't think that's an excuse.
Okay, I agree with you. There's not enough for me to disagree with. The only thing that I would add as a level of a nuance is discretion in prosecution. So the drone operators are technical people. They're effectively being taught to remotely fly, $100,000 multi-million-dollar aircraft, right? So they are technical people. But they are also high school graduates. If you get a 4-year degree, or maybe 2-year college degree having graduates, if you get a 4-year degree, you can commission as an officer. You don't need to enlist. And so most people who have bachelors, they commission as officers. So for me, what's effectively a high school student or a guy who got an associate's degree, who might be 19 years old, 20 years old, getting an order to say, hey, the State Department has classified these cartel organizations as foreign terrorist orgs. The AUMF from 2001 authorizes us to kill terrorists. Therefore, you can pull that trigger and you're Gucci. I'm not putting that responsibility on the trigger puller. I'm putting that responsibility on the JAG.
As a matter
I'm putting
of
that responsibility on the officer who interpreted it that way.
As a matter of discretion and grace?
Discretion. Yeah.
Because
I think you could. I think based off of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, you could charge him with murder because he, if he's taking human life, should have the intelligence and discretion to say, I'm taking human life. I better make sure that this is good to go. But as a matter of discretion.
Yeah, no, I think that I agree with that analysis. For those guys who are not quite following, like suppose that Conor gave you these facts and said, hey, what are clearly non-combatants, women and children, your commanding officer says, hey, we have...
Jen Winkler wants you to speak up.
Okay, yeah. So let's say that all we have are the mere designations by superior officers of what by all accounts appear to be civilians. And notwithstanding the fact that you consider them to be civilians, they say, well, we've designated them members of a foreign terrorist organization. And then you massacre 5 civilians. We would never say, well, he thought that they were designated and he had like the general on the line who said they were designated as such. That's not an excuse to the crimes here. And so I think that ignorance of the law, legality, we should not consider that. Maybe those are mitigating for purposes of discretion, but not as a matter of law. Assuming, by the way, we would even prosecute this, which we're not gonna because of pardons.
I think where war on terror veterans who are sympathetic to the drone strikes, which frustrates the piss out of me because I am a Republican. I believe in a republic. I believe in representative democracy. And I believe in due process. So the frustration with war on terror vets, though, is that we did some hardcore shit in the war on terror. Okay? We did some hardcore shit. As an example, there's a video that was released by WikiLeaks called Collateral Murder. And what happened was an Apache helicopter was going over, like there was a disabled vehicle. I think it was disabled by an IED. This was 2003, 2004. And there were people from a direction that the disabled vehicle had taken sniper fire earlier. There was people with AK-47s and tubes walking towards that area. And so the Apache lights them up and kills them all. Well, it turns out that the tubes were not rocket propelled grenades. They were actually camera equipment from journalists. And the journalists were like wearing press stuff and like all that jazz. And then what happened is after they had like annihilated this militia with like 20 millimeter chain gun fire, there was a van that had pulled up in order to evacuate the wounded people. And the Apache helicopters lit up the van. And so can
you pause? Okay, I have to go with someone in the chat. Hey, Drunken Machine, it's if. You guys are like incapable of dealing with hypotheticals. Not Conor. Conor at least listened to it and dealt with it. It's if it's the case that some grunt knows X and Y and Z. You keep fighting the hypotheticals because you don't know shit about what we're talking about. We're saying if it's hypothetical. You don't have to keep saying, I fucking know shit. They wouldn't have any information. I would never, like, no grunt would ever have the fucking insight or intel to know what they would have to do. Like, we're not talking about that. We're only talking about if. Dipshit. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I also don't think that's true. The kill packets, I mean, the intel guys, I'm friends with an intel guy. They used to they would generate kill packets. My friend was responsible for ISIS, for blowing up ISIS members. And so effectively, I would have to talk to him again just to confirm that I'm not talking on my ass right now. But my understanding is that they generate kill packets. They use social media.
All right, pause.
To figure out who these people are.
Grunts don't know shit. That's why they're grunts. So Connor's giving you some examples of grunts who did know shit. Sure. Shut the fuck up. No one is talking about grunts who don't know shit. It's a hypothetical where grunts do know shit. Holy fuck. Well, 90% of America can't understand a hypothetical. It is insane. See, we live in a society where no one gets fucking hypotheticals. It's crazy.
No, this is what I'm saying though. This guy should be building a mind palace of what we're describing, but instead he's hearing you being critical
he doesn't
of the drone program.
He lacks the gray matter. He doesn't have the gray matter in his brain. Right. He literally is an NPC. We are talking to robots.
That's what I'm saying, dude. So this is why I'm not a Democrat, by the way, because 70% of the population is not building a mind palace. They need the 30% of people who are capable of building mind palaces to lead them. This is actually why I believe in representative democracy.
Okay, all right.
So anyways.
Keep going. Sorry, your friend.
Yeah, I do not want the 70% of people who cannot build mind palaces deciding policy, right? So anyways, the grunts, intel. I wanted to finish that point before we get back into the nastiness of the war.
Yeah, he
on
was
terror.
actually getting read in on some shit with ISIS, right? That's what you're saying?
Yes. So basically, he was finding open source intelligence from social media posts from ISIS and propaganda videos in order to find the targets who were in the intermediate chain of ISIS leadership, developing those kill packets, showing where they were approximately geographically, finding the target indicators like, do they wear this kind of clothing? How tall are they? Like all this kind of stuff that would be necessary for you to take them out with a drone strike. And then he would feed that to an officer who was in charge of the drone operators. And then the drone operators ultimately pull the trigger. But of course, if let's say that you're talking about Muslim people look like Muslim people, dude. They're tall. They're a little bit skinnier than Americans. They wear certain garb.
Oh my God.
In order to be able to kill someone, you need to positively ID them, which means that you need to find their car, or you need to find their clothing, or you need to find their house, or you need to compare their height next to a relative object that you know the approximate height for, like a stop sign. Like there's these things that you do in order to positively identify a target before you kill it. And so pretending like, I agree that the average grunt is a trigger puller. I also agree that the average drone pilot is probably an enlisted service member who doesn't have a lot of college education. However, drone pilots probably are quite technically skilled because they're actually pilots of autonomous vehicles. They probably have a high level of technical skill. So I want to give them, I'll wrap it up, I promise. I want to give them the benefit of being the trigger puller and not having all the information. But the officer above them, whose job is to know everything, he should be accountable for pulling those triggers.
I think that they should be accountable as well. And I wish that there was a chance that we were going to get justice for these murders, which I do think that they're very clearly murders. And you can tell based on the response from conservatives, which has been so lackluster. I mean, Avi did his best, but even he acknowledges that it's almost certainly criminality and illegal. Which the only response is, but what about Obama? Obama's strike was almost certainly authorized. Almost certainly authorized under the rules of war, under the AUMF. I don't even think it's close. I'm going to say, go for it.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to say it's not even close to me. It's so obviously authorized for Obama to do that strike in that case. I don't even think it's close.
Even if you wanted to say Anwar al-Awlaki was a United States citizen and therefore deserved due process, that is something to be fought out by the courts. The 2001 AUMF allows you to take out members of terrorist organizations that either participated in 9/11/2001 or who might be trying to do a jihadist terrorist attack against the United States in the future. And Anwar al-Awlaki was an open propagandist for Al-Qaeda.
He was
the organization that perpetrated 9/11/2001.
Yeah, we were.
Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki was his 16-year-old son who was killed. He wasn't the target of the strike. He was in the presence of Al-Qaeda operatives who were the targets of the strike.
Citizenship does not get you out of like the rules of war. Now, there might be some additional due process considerations that need to be taken with citizens.
If you ever get on Tim Pool, you have to press him because he always brings up Obama killing civilians. You have to talk about the nitty gritty of those scenarios.
If his show isn't over anymore. But to me, it's so trivial. Imagine the best example, I think, is the Civil War. Like, there were no due process considerations at issue in an active non-state conflict, which civil wars are, and they operate under the rules of war. Internally, civil wars have to be conducted under the rules of war. That you had to give trials to every member who was engaged in hostilities of the southern seceding states or whatever. That was not a situation in which the due process clause was a barrier to conducting that war. Now, different circumstances, the due process interest might be different. So if you're coming into an airport, yeah, certainly, if the government has the ability to apprehend you peacefully or to detain you in such a manner, they have to do it, obviously. And if you're a POW under the rules of war, they can't just kill you, right? It's like killing you if your orders their combat status or whatever.
And I think Christian Vlaris reinforces what I was about to just say. Anwar al-Awlaki was in Yemen.
He was in Yemen. Now, I don't think that due process means that you are... I think Americans have due process abroad as well, so far as their government is concerned.
Sure, but I'm just saying, is it reasonable if you're an active member of a foreign terrorist organization that's specifically covered by the AUMF to require the United States military to send a special forces team to kidnap you? Now, maybe
if
it's
they can
ideal.
do so safely. If it's not impractical to do, then yes.
Right. If it's not impractical, maybe it's ideal. But if you're still a member of a foreign terrorist organization that's advocating for terrorist attacks on the United States soil, that's covered by 2001 AUMF,
and not just advocating.
My answer is yes.
Not just advocating, organizing. I mean, this guy's an organizational head of at least an affiliate. If it's not part of Al Qaeda, it's a close affiliate of Al Qaeda, and it was almost certainly Al Qaeda. And so yeah, I for me, it's not even a close call. And everyone who tries to bring up the Al-Awlaki bombing just don't have no fucking idea about the rules of war or the different authorities that would give the government the ability to do that. And it's different.
Just giving you a heads up, I do have a hard out in about 13 minutes.
No worries.
And I do want to show real quick as well.
Yeah.
Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got it, memberships if you got it. My parasocially love you. Thank you for watching the content. Hold on. I did want to get back to the cruelty of the war on terror, though. A argument from conservatives that has nothing to do with legality. Nothing to do with legality. And the fact that Republicans who believe in the rule of law don't care about legality anymore
How many of those
is
are left?
an endless source.
There's none of those left, Connor.
frustration.
There's no. Who are the Republicans who are believe in the rule of law anymore?
Let's not worry about that right now. Let me make a different point.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the war on terror, the one argument from the veterans that I'm sympathetic to, even though I ultimately still think it's stupid, is that the reason why I brought up the collateral murder episode of the WikiLeaks leak is because they're saying we did nasty shit to people. And we also, like with drone strikes, we accepted a certain amount of civilian casualties with drone strikes. And I didn't hear a fucking peep out of liberals or progressives while we were doing that, which is also not true. But while we were doing that, Al-Qaeda killed 3,000 people in 2001, and we conducted a 25-year-odd war that's potentially still ongoing right now, and we killed hundreds of thousands of people, whereas drugs kill 100,000 Americans a year. Isn't this a better use of military force where we're focusing on Central and South America, and we're focusing on something that kills 100,000 Americans a year compared to 3,000 Americans 20 years ago. I'm sympathetic to it. It's still stupid. It's still illegal. I'm sympathetic.
I'm not really sympathetic to it. Like, you can say that about heart disease, right? You could say that about, I don't know, fucking cigarettes and alcohol. I mean, there are a lot
it's
of
also coming from the former party of personal responsibility, where if you do, they used to say that if you're a drug addict and you do drugs and you die from an overdose, that's on you, dummy.
Yes.
But now, because we're so used to using hyperbolic language, they're analogizing people consuming illicit narcotics and dying of an overdose to an intentional terrorist attack by a foreign organization.
Yeah, you can't just look at the consequence of the thing and say, well, therefore it's war, or therefore it's considered an armed conflict. Words are supposed to mean things. Words like invasion, war, armed conflict. And in order to justify the use of force here, it's not enough that, like, we are having a problem. We need to be in an armed conflict, but we're not in an armed conflict. Like, we just have to define what we're in. And it's more than just like the legal issue here. It's an issue of, like, who decides? Who decides when this is okay? And I certainly am not comfortable with the president having unilateral discretion to decide what is a war, what is an armed conflict. Putting aside the issue of, like, well, the Constitution says Congress has a role here, if not the only role, at least when it comes to declaring war. I'm just not comfortable with the president having that authority in our context. Like, given the insane president we currently have, we don't want him deciding unilaterally, like, okay, now Democrats are considered armed combatants, and we're in a state of war with them. And also, last thing, if we're in an armed conflict with the cartels, that would stand to reason, therefore, that the use of force isn't just justified abroad, outside of the country, but inside the country, right? Just if we're in an armed conflict, you're allowed to use military force, not just outside your country, but inside your country. So understand that when you're giving the authority for the government to do these kinds of strikes abroad in the high seas, and if you agree to have that power, that would also extend domestically to certain groups.
That's where a lot of people on the right wing, including Tim Pool, by the way, who pisses me off to no end. Yeah. Tim Pool was cheering on Antifa being declared a foreign terrorist org organized by some dude out of Germany. And I'm just thinking to myself, it's like, so what you're because we did some nasty shit in the War on Terror. Like what we did, which War on Terror veterans lionize, is we got intel that somebody was a member of a terrorist org. We had no idea, what terrorist org. We didn't ask which one, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, whatever. We didn't give a shit. And what the door kickers did is they went to that dude's house in the middle of the night. They kicked his fucking door in. They raided his house. They shoved a rifle in his face. If he resisted, they killed him. They shot his dog if he had a dog. And then they put him in a black bag and they dragged him to a place to be interrogated. That is what you have signed off on for any member of Antifa. And you can argue like, oh, it's an idea. It's not an organization, blah, blah, blah. But when you make Antifa super ephemeral like that, what you've done is you've now said that if a protester goes to an American protest with a black mask over their face, they're now a member of Antifa, and therefore the military or law enforcement can kick in their door, shoot their dogs, drag them out, black bag them, and interrogate them. That's what you just signed off on. And the fact that, like, I don't know, people watch like movies like V for Vendetta, and they think that they're a member of the oppressed civilian population. But when almost a direct analog manifests itself in front of their eyeballs, they're cheering on the black bagging death squads.
Yeah,
I think they've lost their fucking minds.
They have. They've totally lost their minds, and they don't give a shit about any of it because for them it's just memes. I am struggling to find a Republican to argue this issue with me. There are a couple of these issues. This specifically, the Comey decision. The only people who could come to do that, or sorry, the Comey indictment. The only people who did that were like literal idiots who hadn't even like read anything. And then the strikes. The strikes are like, or sorry, birthright citizenship. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it's just very, very hard. And I guess we can end on this. What do you think is going on with the Republican debate scene? Because I am finding it more and more difficult to get people to actually defend the administration. And it seemed like prior to the election, everyone was willing to talk about how great Trump's first term was and defend it. But not so anymore.
That's the thing is, so it's a schism. So what's happening is there are people who are abandoning Trump because they got what they voted for, right? They didn't know they were voting for it, but they're abandoning Trump because the tariffs have fucked up their businesses. They didn't think the mass deportations were going to be as violent as they thought they were going to be. They didn't think that Donald Trump was going to buy random American corporations. They didn't think that he was going to engage in like all this random shit. They're not a fan of the drone strikes, whatever. That's probably, I would say, a third, maybe a quarter of the people who have abandoned Trump are those people who criticize Trump because he's gone too far. Like Tim Dillon, for instance. He was like a comedian from last year who was glazing Trump. And now he's like, when you said mass deportation, I didn't know you meant beating up random Hispanic ladies. I don't like Trump anymore, right? So it's kind of those idiots, the Tim Dillons, the Andrew Schultzes, all those people. But what I would say is happening, especially on the debate scene, because the debate scene was so pro-Trump, is that it's because Trump has failed to execute the agenda sufficiently. Okay? Sufficiently. There is an excellent bit of content that I recommend you go watch. Did you see Rob Noor talking about the election? Did you cover that?
His coverage of the election?
You have to cover it. It is so funny because he's screaming for 45 minutes about how the Republicans have failed Trump because they failed to enshrine all of his executive orders into law, how everyone was too weak to show up for the off-year election, how Trump himself has swept for Epstein and Trump himself has engaged in armed conflict with Iran. And as a result, he's totally betrayed his base. And what's going to happen next year if Trump doesn't become a mass deporting, isolationist, drone striking, I don't think he mentions drones because they weren't that big back then, but like drone striking piece of shit, if he doesn't become more of what Trump promised to be an authoritarian dickwad, then the Republicans are going to lose in the midterms and they're going to deserve it. It's fucking hilarious. It's great content. It was actually really cathartic.
I'll have to take a look at it. I tried to reach out to Rob to talk to him a couple times and he was like busy or something. I don't know, man. It's getting a little.
I don't think
weird.
He's busy. I think the Crucible's avoiding you.
Put me on Word War debate, Coach. I'm ready. Yeah, I think
dude,
that's
what I'm saying. Dude, Pisco's right here. He's the successor to Stephen Bonnell. He doesn't have all of the personal foibles. You know, he's ready to go. He's ready to debate. Let's do this.
They should debate Destiny too. I don't know why. Like, have they blacklisted him?
I don't know if they've blacklisted him, but I have a feeling that if they wanted to debate him because they thought it was going to be good for their content and they would be able to get a W, they would debate him. If they felt like they wouldn't debate him, then they would use Corey Comparatori and the Charlie Kirk assassination as an excuse not to talk to him.
Yeah, well, there's always something, huh? Well, Conor, listen, kind of a scattershot conversation, but I always appreciate talking to you, and maybe we can get a little update on the chart at some point, but that doesn't have to be a priority. I do hope that at some point we can get LACTOID in on the call and have you, because I've never seen you like moderate a conversation. Maybe it might be useful to have you there just to see what you think.
Sure. No, I like LACTOID says, I mean, I'm banned from both Destiny and Pisco servers, just saying. Oh, okay.
Wait,
now
wait.
the accusations of censorship.
When did I ban LACTOID? I don't ban fucking anybody.
You might not have. Maybe a moderator did. But no, LACTOID, I get frustrated because I think LACTOID has the same politics that I had in like 2011, which is kind of like, he's more anti-status than I am, but he's kind of like libertarian, conservatarian or whatever. But
how does he justify his vote?
I really don't like his geopolitics, but he doesn't like my geopolitics either. So it is what it is.
Oh,
but I had a great time. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for giving my people content. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage in chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them, and let's do it again soon.
All right. Later, guys. And guys, hey, I'm raiding into Hutch.